Well, hello everybody and welcome back to Fashion and with me, Scottish Avoni, Fashion Curator. You can now keep up to date with Fashion and news and upcoming episodes by following at Fashion and with Scottish Avoni on Instagram and by hitting that subscribe button in the bottom corners of your screen. This week is a tale of two cities as we delve into the world of fashion, luxury and exclusivity. The theme of this episode is fashion and couture. Haute Couture is recognised as a discipline and follows a set of strict codes that preserve the essence of this most demanding craft. Haute Couture is an art form inseparable from fashion that achieved some of its most finest moments during the years 1947 to 1957. During this period, often referred to as the Golden Age, Paris reaffirmed its position as the capital of fashion and its reputation for producing the most luxurious and creative fashions money could buy. This period is also regarded as the zenith of French couture, when designers such as Christian Dior, Cristóbal Balenciaga and Jacques Fath reigned supreme. During this golden age of couture, London was also a major player and produced a great many couturiers such as Norman Hartnell and John Cavanagh. Couture was based on the principles of a division of labour, with separate in-house departments for dressmaking and tailoring, supported by a luxury trade in trimmings, feathers, floral accessories, embroideries, beading and ribbon work. The topic of couture is vast and multifaceted, and the themes we will discuss in this episode are by no means exhaustive. With this in mind, we'll be looking at the world of haute couture through four themes: the birth of haute couture, a tale of two cities, couture versus ready-to-wear, and the couture legacy. Haute couture was a French phenomenon and is part of the French identity. Paris fashion had a reputation for excellence as early as the 17th century, when the expertise of Parisian craftsmen became widely admired in the royal courts of Europe. Rose Bertin, Queen Marie Antoinette's marchand de mode, elevated the reputation of Parisian fashion merchants. Between 1804 and 1822, Louis Hippolyte Leroy, a former hairdresser, achieved comparable prominence as dressmaker to the Empress Josephine. Despite Leroy being the father of haute couture in the true sense of the phrase, it is Charles Frederick Worth, an Englishman, who is universally credited with this title. Worth's career is the ideal example of the evolution of the haute couturier, and during the latter half of the 19th century, his premises on the Rue de la Paix became a microcosm of luxury. Because mid to late 19th century etiquette dictated that a lady never wear the same dress twice, Worth became highly skilled at creating a plethora of designs, all based on variations of a theme, which naturally evolved into designing whole collections. Using labels stitched into the waistband, Worth was one of the first designers to sign his gowns. He dictated his clients' tastes and manipulated their desires with new designs that made garments from previous seasons look, well, out of date. In 1868, Worth was one of the founders of the trade association which would become known as the Chambre Syndicale de la Couture. A plethora of fashionable couturiers followed in both London and Paris, including Paul Poiret, Lady Duff Gordon or Lucille, Elsa Schiaparelli, Jeanne Lanvin and Gabrielle Chanel, just to name a few. The golden age of haute couture came in the years following World War II, when it was widely acknowledged that a dress that bore the label of a Parisian couturier was the epitome of design, elegance and taste. A dress signed by a great couturier that fits like a glove immediately invests one with enormous self-confidence. Nothing will alter the fact that this is a dress by the great X, and because it is by X, nobody can possibly speak ill of it. The main aim and focus of the Chambre Syndicale was to protect France's historic reputation as the leader in innovative and original fashion design, as well as its specialised artisanal skills. Haute couture was an integral part of France's cultural identity and a huge source of income, accounting for over 300 million francs in French exports before World War II. During the German occupation of Paris, President of the Chambre syndicale Lucien Lelong famously refused to move the production of couture to Berlin, saying, "It is in Paris or it is nowhere." Each member of the Chambre syndicale had to apply annually to maintain their membership and had to adhere to a strict set of regulations. Each couturier had to maintain suitable premises in Paris and present 2 collections annually, consisting of at least 75 made-to-measure original designs, one in spring and one in autumn. The rules also affected the technical execution of each design and ensured that couture retained the type of practices that would deter mass production. London's couture industry became firmly established after the First World War and was centred around Mayfair. London couturiers distinguished themselves from the court dressmakers by presenting seasonal collections that were directional in design. The Incorporated Society of London Fashion Designers was a membership organisation founded in 1942 to promote the British fashion and textile industry and create luxury couture to be sold abroad to help raise money for the war effort. The organisation sought to present itself as an alternative to the revived Paris couture industry and the Chambre syndicale. In order to be accepted, each new member needed to receive the votes of at least 2/3 of the existing members and have shown at least 4 collections before being considered. Like Paris' Chambre syndicale, the Incorporated Society of London Fashion Designers' role in promoting couture was implicit in its aim to assist fashion designers by protecting their original designs. Paris and London were at the forefront of European couture in the years following World War II. During the war years, there had been no major changes to fashion until February 1947, when Christian Dior launched his new look. Christian Dior's 1947 collection, coined by American fashion editor Carmel Snow as the new look, heralded a major change in fashion and influenced the world of couture immediately. Dior's models displayed dresses with rounded shoulders, cinched waists and jutting hips that supported noticeably larger and fuller skirts. His designs harked back to the corseted and voluminous silhouettes of the previous century. Clearly defying the principles of wartime rationing, the lengthening of the silhouette was considered an excessive consumption of fabric. Dior's new look changed the course of fashion and, after the German occupation of Paris, reaffirmed the city's position as fashion's capital. Throughout his short 10-year career, Christian Dior revolutionised the conventions of elegance and femininity, designing collections infused with dreams and enchantment. Dior introduced a variety of new silhouettes, including the H-line, the A-line and the Y-line, and was inspired by flowers, colours and fine art. By the time of his death in 1957, his name had become synonymous with French luxury all around the world. Cristóbal Balenciaga's career spanned 1918 to 1968. Initially opening his workshop in Spain under the name of Asa before relocating to Paris in 1937. His formal training in tailoring set him apart from other couturiers of the time, and the esoteric nature of his tailoring resulted in him being referred to even by Christian Dior as the Master. In Paris, Balenciaga was the grandest and most expensive couture house in the city, and his salon on Avenue Georges V quickly became the city's most exclusive address. His design process started with the fabric rather than with a sketch, saying, "It's the fabric that decides." Cecil Beaton wrote, "Whereas Dior's dresses are most ingeniously and beautifully evolved from sketches, Balenciaga uses fabric like a sculptor working in marble." Balenciaga pioneered new shapes never before seen in women's fashion. In 1957, he shocked the world with the introduction of the sack dress, which completely eliminated the waistline. The sack was met with hostility from both clients and press, who exclaimed, "It's hard to be sexy in a sack." Despite this, his clients were extremely loyal, and in 1968, when his fashion house closed, Mona von Bismarck supposedly shut herself in her room for 3 days straight. Jacques Fath, a self-taught designer, was considered one of the 3 dominant influences on post-war haute couture, and learned his craft from studying museum exhibitions and books about fashion. In his opinion, Balenciaga was too extreme, and although he admired Dior, he teased him about his serious bourgeois manner. He hired a number of young designers as assistants, some of which later went on to form their own houses, including Hubert de Givenchy and Valentino Garavani. Known for dressing the chic young Parisian, Fath's self-promotion and publicity campaigns were hugely successful, but at the heart of it all were his chic and feminine designs. Jacques Fath, despite numerous rumours of being effeminate, was regarded as a fine specimen of manliness, and articles appeared in gentlemen's magazines describing how to emulate his masculine elegance. The dissemination of the Fath look and lifestyle resulted in haute couture sales that were second only to Dior's at the time of his tragic early death in 1954 from leukemia. British Vogue stated, "In London the fashion point is woven into a wearable design. These clothes are good-mannered, they seldom trumpet their qualities, but they are clothes that elegant women everywhere love to possess." The London couturier Norman Hartnell had a long and successful career in fashion design and was among the founders of the Incorporated Society of London Fashion Designers. He created the wedding dress of Princess Elizabeth in 1947 for her marriage to Prince Philip. With a fashionable sweetheart neckline and a softly folding full skirt, it was embroidered with some 10,000 seed pearls and thousands of white beads. In the mid-1950s, Hartnell reached the peak of his fame, and his full-length crinoline-style skirts became one of his signature styles during this time. As dressmaker to Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II, crinoline styles were a staple of the wardrobes Hartnell created for royal overseas tours worn for formal evening engagements. Silk satin with beaded embroidery and re-embroidered net lace were key features of these crinoline styles. Hardy Amies set up his eponymous couture house in 1945 at number 14 Savile Row. In 1948, British Vogue reported that Hardy Amies was sensitively attuned to the undertones of advanced fashion. His designs are vigorous, progressive, up to the minute. He refuses to be typed as a tailor, and although he knows he can design a suit standing on his head, he intends to achieve equal reclaim for his dresses. By 1950, he was regarded as a British couturier of assured quality and output, and his house style was divided between tailoring and very feminine evening gowns. He was introduced to the Princess Elizabeth through one of her ladies-in-waiting, and thus began a long-lasting working relationship of couturier and client. Irish-born couturier John Kavanagh established his namesake house in London in 1952. Kavanagh's personal assistant described his work as being Paris in London. There was a lightness of touch, a feminine delicacy, a fragility unlike the work of any of the other London couturiers. The dashing couturier portrayed himself as a savvy socialite through his association with the fashionable milieu, which gave his business a boost, allowing him to meet and mingle with those who could afford couture clothing. Trading under Edward Molyneux in London and with Pierre Balmain in Paris, Kavanagh was renowned for his elegant tailoring, purity of line and form, sense of colour and sense of chic. Emulating the practices established by Christian Dior in 1947, Kavanagh also became known for producing a line each season. In 1952, for example, Kavanagh debuted his Swan line, making reference to the graceful bird, which featured a long neck and bodice with the skirt swept to the rear with a train. Kavanagh's reputation was cemented with his coronation collection for spring-summer 1953 to commemorate the coronation of Elizabeth II. Couture was different from ready-to-wear in many ways, but its most defining difference was that each couture garment was a one-off, made from start to finish to the specifications of a particular client, and made by specialists who took great pride in its creation. The death of couture was announced in 1964 when Queen magazine published fictitious obituaries of Cristóbal Balenciaga and Hubert de Givenchy, and in Paris between 1946 and 1967, the number of couture houses plummeted from 106 to just 19. Cultural and economic changes in society during the 1950s and the changes in patterns of consumption eventually displaced couture, giving the ready-to-wear market the chance to blossom and grow. The 1960s youthquake and London-centric swinging 60s saw fashion shift its focus from couture to a younger, less wealthy clientele, driven by the emerging ready-to-wear market. Designers such as Mary Quant and Ozzie Clark and Paris-based Sonia Rykiel offered greater individualism that suited the emerging youth culture's budget. It was impossible to hold back the democratization of fashion, and in Paris in 1966, Dior opened their Miss Dior boutique, and Yves Saint Laurent has Rive Gauche boutique on Paris's fashionable left bank. In London, Carnaby Street became the home of the mod and a thriving mecca for the young, fashion-hungry generation. Worth, Doucet, Poiret, Vionnet, Chanel, Schiaparelli, Gray, Dior, Balenciaga, Fath, Balmain, Givenchy, Cavanagh and Hartnell are just a few of the designers who wrote the history of couture. Since the 1970s, the legacy of couture was maintained by master couturiers such as Yves Saint Laurent and his self-proclamation as the last great couturier. Since the 1980s, Karl Lagerfeld maintained the cogency of Chanel's brand, based on Coco Chanel's original philosophy of function married to exclusivity. Chanel also purchased many of the most important surviving Parisian workshops, such as the legendary Maison Massage. John Galliano made history as the first British designer since Charles Frederick Worth to head up a French haute couture house through his appointment as chief designer at Givenchy. A year later, Galliano took over at the helm of Christian Dior, and for over 10 years kept the traditions of couture very much alive with his unique version of theatre and spectacle. For Galliano, couture has provided a conduit for his immeasurable imagination and creativity, from his tenure at Christian Dior to his current position at Maison Margiela. Today, the couture collections are still shown twice a year in Paris, their role mainly to showcase craftsmanship, garner publicity and provide inspiration. The renamed Fédération de la Haute Couture et de la Mode currently has 16 haute couture members, 8 correspondent members, i.e. those with atelier outside of Paris, and 17 guest members. Haute couture is an art form which is inseparable from fashion. An age-old French phenomenon pioneered by a 19th century Englishman, the art and craft of haute couture produced some of the most luxurious and creative fashions from history. The legacy of couture still holds strong today and provides a platform for select designers and houses to showcase craftsmanship and inspire designers and the fashion industry as a whole. Defined by the Fédération de la Haute Couture et de la Mode, couture is tremendously modern. Couture is a permanent gateway between a tradition for excellence in know-how and contemporaneity in creation, embodying today's manufacturing techniques that are at the cutting edge of innovation. Well, that's it for today's episode of Fashion and Couture. The complete season 1 and 2 of Fashion and are available to watch. Just click on the playlist in the corners of your screen, and please don't forget to subscribe to Fashion and with me, Scott Schiavone, Fashion Curator.